All right, well, welcome everybody. We are gonna talk about team branding today. So in case anybody's in the wrong spot, that's what this talk is. But I just wanna tell you guys a little bit about myself first to get started. My name is Kristen Corsetto, but everybody calls me Pearl. I'm connected to Citrus Circuits because my husband has been a mentor for a long time. So that's my connection, but I am a graphic designer by profession. So I do freelance design in a lot of different settings. I do logo design and branding, which is what we're going to talk about today, and then also print design and things like that, and then a little bit of web as well. So I just want to get kind of a sense of who's in the room. So how many folks do maybe like photography for their team? Okay. What about videography? Okay. What about web design? Okay, some, not a lot of that. What about like t-shirts and things like that? What about anything else that I missed? Is anyone doing something that I didn't mention? Yeah. Okay, yeah, totally. Banners and stuff like that. Yeah, what else?
Currently, learning how to program the robot.
Okay.
But maybe in the future work on it.
Okay, cool. So we've got a little bit of everything. So today we're going to talk about branding, like I said. So I apologize, my computer is like all the way over here, so my slide clicks are a little awkward. But we're going to jump in. First, we need to get a working definition. What is a brand? So if I ask you to define a brand, what would you say? Any ideas? Yeah.
Kind of like the ideas and kind of what you market yourself as.
What you market yourself as? Okay, what else? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Something that identifies you. What else? Any other thoughts? Okay, cool. That's really good. A lot of people would say maybe something like a logo straight away. You know, that's definitely a really big part of a brand. But we're going to talk today about how that's only one piece of a really robust, identifiable. Those are really good words. Brand. So the history of branding. Just really briefly, sort of obvious, but if you didn't already know, farmers would actually brand with a metal stamp their cattle, their pigs, things like that, so that they could tell which animals were theirs. And so it had to be a couple things. It had to be really, really simple because you had to be able to make a metal, mold out of it. And then also it had to be easily identifiable straight away. And so even though, the purpose of branding is really, really different and it's for all marketing on a ton of different levels, that principle still stays the same: simplicity and easy to identify. So, but when you think of a brand today, you might more readily think of some things like this. And again, I said, a brand is partly a logo, but it's a lot of different things as well. So it also includes colors, fonts, images, and any styles that are associated with the brand. So can anybody think of anything besides just that short list that might contribute to a brand? Yeah. Song, yeah, music, that could totally be a part of it. Yeah, go ahead. Social media, yeah, the way that your posts look, the kind of posts, the kind of things you're writing in your descriptions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just the name, the company name, or in your guys' case, the team name. Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Your company's story.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a huge thing. So maybe, a company that, started off really small and has expanded, that might be a part of their story. Or some, maybe if you think about maybe an outdoor, like an REI type company, something, committed to outdoors, that might be their story of being outside, that might be a part of it. Yeah, what else? Cool, those are some really good starting definitions and things to expand on. So, but I wanted to give us, a really concise, defined definition so that we can go forward with what the definition of a brand is. You can come through if you want to. I know it's awkward with the cable, but if you need to step over it or weave through the desks, feel free. So this is a definition that I found in some research, and I think it's really good. A brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization, or about your team, right? So a gut feeling about the product, service, organization. So that's, to me, an interesting definition because all the things we mentioned, colors, fonts, logos, music, social media, everything like that, the gut feeling really is a product of the culmination of all those things, right? The things that you actually have control of are working to build that gut feeling. Does that make sense? Okay, so if we're gonna do a couple examples. If I show you this image, just shout out some like gut feelings that you have related to this image. Yeah. Burgers, okay, fantastic. Good food, okay. What else? What are some other gut feelings? Yeah, go ahead. Obesity, yeah, that is definitely a gut feeling that a lot of people have. Oh, I think the camera moved. You might need to fix that. It's all right. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to make sure we get the live stream fixed. Okay, what else? What are some other gut feelings about this? Go ahead.
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Okay, what else? Okay, cool. That's a good start. What about this image? What are some of your gut feelings about this image?
Tasty.
Tasty. Okay, great. What else? Go ahead.
Quick.
Quick. Okay. What else? For me, I don't know. You guys might disagree. I noticed these logos are almost the same in a lot of ways, right? They're red and yellow, okay? They have big, bold sans serif type that cuts through the middle of the logo, right? They're both fast food joints. They're both, burgers. But for me, I have really different gut feelings when I look at those two images. Would you guys agree with that, right? Okay, so that's where the full package of the branding comes in. So, when McDonald's comes out with like a new trend, and they're like, oh, we do coffee now. Everyone's like, okay, I guess McDonald's does coffee, right? In-N-Out, if they did so much as added chicken nuggets, everyone would be up in arms, right? Because those are their brands, right? So without our realizing it, we have really different gut feelings about these two brands. So let's do another example. What are some of your gut feelings about that image, the Honda logo? Any thoughts? Yeah. Yeah, minivans, totally. Okay, go ahead. Modern, cool.
Fairly common.
Fairly common, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Maybe dependability, something like that. Go ahead. Reliable, yep, totally, totally. What else? Cool, all right, what about that image, the Mercedes logo? Do you have, yeah, go ahead. Luxury, totally, yeah, what else? Bougie, absolutely, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. What else? So again, we have a really similar logo. These are like, silver logos that fit in a really small space. If you need to step over the cable, you can feel free to do that. I know it's a little bit tight. Or you can zigzag through the desks as well, whatever's easier. Here, let me pull this forward for you. There you go. So yeah, we have really different gut feelings about these two images, even though, again, the logos at face value are really similar. They're circles, they fit into a geometric shape, they're associated with cars, but the whole brand package that these two companies have set up gives us a really different gut feeling. Okay, so does that make sense as a concept? Okay, cool, cool, cool. So branding principle number one, there's gonna be three big branding principles. Those are kind of our main takeaways. So if you forget everything else, these are gonna be the ones to hang on to. Decide who your brand is for and what you want their gut feelings to be, okay? So for FRC teams, that's pretty straightforward, right? For the most part, it's for high school students who have an interest in STEM of some kind, right? So that's pretty straightforward, okay? But you might shape that a little bit, a little bit more carefully. You might be really interested in people who it's their first time getting into anything with STEM. They didn't really think they would be interested in it. Or you might be, really targeting people who are really outgoing and want to do outreach or whatever. So really tailoring who your brand is for and then what you want their gut feelings to be. So do you want, I don't know, let's pose that to you guys. What would you want some of the gut feelings people have about your team brand to be? Any ideas? Yeah. Clean. Cool. I like that. Yeah. Trustworthy. That's a really good one. I like that. What else? Go ahead. Hardworking. Cool.
Hardworking and fun.
And fun. Yeah, totally. Totally. I know, without even naming team names, I bet you guys could think of some teams whose brand is that they're just out here to have a good time. Some teams whose brand is that they are really, really competitive. Some teams whose brand is that they're super, super helpful. Some team whose brand it is that they've been around forever. They have like a single digit number, maybe. There's like all these different kind of brands that are already established, right? So if your brand doesn't feel like it's established, or you're looking to tailor it a little bit better, decide what you want people's gut feelings about your brand to be, about your team, and then all the branding decisions that you're going to make going forward are going to be catered to that. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So do we have gut feelings about that image? Probably. I don't know. I have gut feelings about that image, right? So that's, an example of like brand development within FRC, right? So if Robonauts didn't, yeah, okay, similar. Yeah. I mean, if they didn't come out with a reveal video with a powder-coated white and gold robot, everyone would be like, what's going on? Right? And like not a lot of other teams do that, but everyone would be surprised if they didn't do that. That would be really off-brand for them. So you have gut feelings and implicit expectations about different teams and things like that. And so your goal, for those of you that are a part of, maybe the media team, media sub-team within your team, is going to be to shape those feelings, okay? People probably already have them, right? Whether or not you've been actively shaping them, but to have a really well-established brand, you want to be shaping them intentionally and in the way that you want. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Let's see what's next. So yeah, we covered a little bit of this. What gut feelings do you want people to have about your team brand? Is it that you're high performance? Is it that you're friendly? Is it that you're helpful, fun-loving? All of these are valid, right? It's just what matters is deciding on your focus and sticking to it, right? Like maybe not every team is going to be like, trying to look like Robonauts and powder coat their I mean, it's maybe not feasible, but it's also maybe not what you're going for, right? So all of these are totally valid. It's just making sure that you decide what your priorities are, and then all your design decisions cater to that. So, if this isn't something that you have already done as a team, is this something, who feels like they already do that? Okay. So maybe some of you are like, yeah, a little bit sometimes. Okay, so if you feel like your brand isn't super well defined, I would encourage you to take some time with, appropriate team members, whoever that is. Maybe it's student leaders, the media team, maybe some mentors are involved that are relevant, to decide what you want those gut feelings to be, okay? And then also, like we talked about, decide who your target audience is and how their particular gut feelings are going to be shaped by who they are. Does that make sense? So like if I go back to the McDonald's example, I think my gut feeling about McDonald's when I was getting Happy Meals at 5 was like a really different gut feeling than my gut feeling about McDonald's now. Does that make sense? Or maybe someone who can afford a Mercedes has a different gut feeling than someone who can't, right? Maybe someone who can't is like, it's not even worth it anyway. Those people are snobs, whatever. Versus maybe someone who can, they like it. So, so you might consider, again, probably your main target audience is students, people you want to attract to your team, and then other teams and how you want them to perceive you. But how many of you guys talk to sponsors? Yeah, okay. How many of you know that probably their perception is going to be a lot different, right? So, what a high school student is going to think about your brand and your logo and things like that, it's going to be really different than, an exec at a company that you're trying to get money from. So considering how you can cater your brand to those different audiences is going to be really important, right? Maybe you shape it a little bit differently. Maybe your social media posts are super goofy and fun, and then maybe your sponsorship letters are a little bit different. But how do you make that a cohesive brand that feels like one thing? Does that make sense? Okay, so if you haven't done that already, that's step 1. Decide what those gut feelings are, because if you try to jump the gun and make design decisions before you've decided this, your design decisions aren't going to be very well informed. Okay, cool. So branding principle number 2, make your brand your best friend and get to know it. Okay, make your brand your best friend. How many of you have a best friend? Okay, I have a best friend. How many of you have whatever, close friends, a group of really close friends? Okay, everyone's got friends, come on. So if you say, someone describes something that your best friend did and you're like, what? No, not my friend. They would never do that, right? You could imagine having that kind of conversation. Or, someone describes something that your friend did and you're like, yeah, of course they did. that's my friend, that's who they are, right? So you can kind of predict what your friend would or would not do just because you know them really well. And so that's what you need to do with your brand. So let me show you a couple of examples to explain a little bit more. So, just like I said, considering how your best friend would respond to a given situation, you could probably guess their response in advance. Your brand should be the same way. So as a result, your customers should also know what to expect in advance from your brand. So just like I was saying with In-N-Out, if they started introducing a ton of new products, everyone would be like, what, right? Or if McDonald's never added any new products, people would be like, what, right? But when they do stuff that's on brand, everyone's like, yeah, okay, that's them, right? Or like, we talked about Honda. If you have a Honda that's breaking down after 5 years, people are going to be like, what? It's a Honda. It's supposed to run for 200,000 miles. I'm supposed to have this thing for 20 years, right? So people know what to expect from a brand. Or like we said, if 118 just, didn't even qualify for champs and they had this really terrible looking robot and they did no reveal, everyone would be like, what? So there's all these things where people have these expectations already. And so an example would be Apple packaging, right? You know what Apple packaging is going to look like before you see it. You could guess, if they came out with a new product, you'd be like, well, okay, it's going to be the shape of the product. It's going to have a picture of it on the front. It's going to have a logo on the side. It's going to be white. It's going to be clean, right? And that doesn't mean this isn't the right decision for every brand. If you were a toy company, this would be a really bad design decision, okay? No kid walking through the toy aisle is going to see this and be like, oh man, get me that, okay? But if your target audience is people who want high-end tech, this is perfect, right? And it was really interesting. I did some research. Apple packaging has looked the same for years, right? This is the very first iPod, and it's really not very different, right? The font's a little bit different, but it's the same, right? And so people know what to expect, okay? So this is something that you guys need to do once you, yeah, go ahead.
So it's an example of a company that's figured out what its brand is going to be from the start and kept it consistent.
Yeah, totally. And so if back to the example of making your brand your best friend, in the same way that you would know before something happens, like how your best friend might respond in a given situation, or if you hear something that they did, you're like, that feels a little off character for my best friend, right? You can run your design decisions by your brand, as if your brand was a person, right? So is that something my brand would do? Is that normal for my brand, or is that a little bit off brand? Does that make sense? So one example is I work for one of my clients is a kind of fancy real estate brokerage. They sell fancy homes. And so a lot of the design decisions that I make when I'm designing for them are not my personal preference, right? It's kind of traditional looking. It's very simple and understated. It's all navy and white. I don't love it personally, but I'm not the target audience. I'm not a luxury home buyer in Texas, which is their target audience, right? And so every time, if something starts to get a little more modern looking or a little more fun looking, what I would naturally gravitate towards, I have to run that by that brand that I've developed and see if that's something I think that brand would do, as if it was a person. So does that concept kind of make sense? Okay, and you can do the same thing. Was anybody in my talk last year? Okay, so we talked about personas in that talk. And so you can do the same thing with your target audience, okay? So you can develop a few personas. We talked about a few different target audience members you might have. Maybe students at your school you want to attract, new kind of recruits. Maybe students on other teams and how you want other teams to interact with you, and then maybe sponsors. Those might be your 3 big ones. So develop a persona for each of those ones. So, say the student at your school persona is a kid named Jason, and Jason is a sophomore, and he loves math. It's his favorite subject, and physics, and he can't wait to study engineering. Okay, whatever. You decide everything about. And Jason doesn't really love sports, and he's looking for an after-school activity. Everything, all these things. And then you're like, okay, then you are working on a banner. You're working on your T-shirt. You're working on whatever. Okay, does Jason love this? That's how you decide if it's a good design. Doesn't matter if you love it. It really, really doesn't, unless you perfectly fit the persona, which you might. Okay, it's nice that you guys are designing for peers. That's helpful. But if you need to develop personas, especially for sponsor-facing stuff, that might be really helpful. Okay, so whatever, Mr. Smith is an executive at this company, and he's 45 and he's got 2 kids who are also about our age, and right, you can do all these things and then run all your design decisions by that persona. Does that make sense? You kind of create this imaginary person and decide if what you're designing fits them. And that helps you get your own preferences out of the way, okay? So I think we covered a few of these things. Yep, that's pretty much what we just talked about. So that brings us to branding principle 3. Once you've done all that stuff, okay, once you've decided who your target audience is, what you want their gut feelings to be, and then you've kind of made that brand your best friend and decided what they would and wouldn't do, make a brand standards guide and stick to it. Always, no exceptions, okay? How many teams have a brand standard guide? Okay, a couple. That's good. I'm going to show you what I mean by that if you don't already know. So this is when we finally get into the mechanics, right? So we did a whole lot of legwork about just sort of thought experiments, and now we're ready to get to actual design assets. And it takes a while to get there. But this includes, not limited to, fonts, colors, the way your web pages are laid out, the types of images or styles of images that you might use, and the wording or voice in your text, right? So like, is all the text on your website very informal? Is it formal? Whatever, that kind of thing. In your social media posts, all that kind of thing. And then all the other stuff we talked about earlier applies too. People were talking about music and all kinds of other stuff. All that applies. So I'm going to run you guys through a brand standards guide that I developed for a company that I work for. This is a nonprofit here in Davis, and one of my best friends helped start it. They basically try to do wraparound services for foster families. So kind of helping the foster parents get the support they need, helping the kids get the support they need, help the bio families get the support they need, and then maybe plugging them in with other nonprofits like churches and stuff like that that could be more support for them. So this was the logo that I developed for them. And I'm going to walk you through what their brand standards guide looks like. So, and then by the way, I'm going to work, this will be in the video description, the InDesign file for this. Do people work with InDesign or Adobe products? For those of you who do, the template for this will be in the video description within a couple days. So if you want to download it and use it for your own team, you can totally do that. So I'm just going to read a couple things that we wrote about this logo, and this is sort of the thought experiment part, this page. So putting into words what we want those gut feelings to be, why we made some of the design decisions we did to cater to those gut feelings, and then kind of the meat of the brand standards comes next. So it says, the Family Hope Network logo communicates movement, change, and the breaking of cycles. The circular shape of the logo implies the cycles that at-risk individuals are often trapped in. But the Family Hope Network, the actual words of the company, are placed in the gap, effectively breaking the cycle. The alternating colors also imply movement and the ways that Family Hope Network intends to mobilize churches to serve at-risk populations. So that's the brand structure. Key messages. So these are some of the main gut feelings we want their target audience to have. Family Hope Network will focus on breaking cycles that continue through generations. Cycles will be broken by mobilizing churches and individuals to take action in the lives of at-risk individuals. Family Hope Network will provide the resources necessary to accomplish these tasks and connect individuals who are able to help with individuals in need or in need of help. Organizational strengths, integrity, dependability, connection, expertise, and change. Okay, so that was all the legwork in the thinking and thought experiment side that we did before we laid down the logo. Okay, next page of the brand standards. Now, this brand standards package is what I give to logo design clients when I'm done. Okay, so this is for like them to basically not screw up their own brand, right? That's what the purpose of this document. But I think, and for myself, if I stay on as the in-house designer for a company, then it might be a little bit different because I'm the one maintaining the brand going forward. But for you guys, right, all of you in this room are gone from your team within 4 years, right? So all the work that you do, you need to set it down in a way that's going to be sustainable for teams. So trying to make this as idiot proof and detailed as possible will really help your team brand over time, rather than just hoping, training new kids is done thoroughly every time. If you have a document like this, then anyone can come in and make sure they're in compliance with brand standards, okay? So primary brand logo looks like this. It has two versions, one with the full name and then one with the just abbreviation. You guys might have a few different versions of your logo too. Decide, I wouldn't maybe do more than 3, decide which. So it might be maybe a common one would be like, logo mark, name underneath, logo mark, name beside, logo mark alone. Those would be maybe some different ones. But that's not always the case. Like if we go back to the example of Apple, their mark, the apple never coexists with the word apple, right? They use either or. So decide what you're gonna do, and then that is law, okay? So they are allowed to use their logo in 2 forms. And then improper usage, this is helpful for people so they don't, this should go without saying, but just so they know. So I flipped the thing, don't alter logo elements, don't change it and put it in just a random color, right? Usually black or white is acceptable, right? But no other, you don't want, if your logo is normally green, you don't want it showing up in purple ever, right? Don't stretch or distort the logo, right? If it doesn't fit in a space, you need to scale it uniformly. And then don't put it over random photos. So those are the ones that I usually lay down. You guys can see if there's maybe other ones that you want to make sure that you do. Maybe you're not okay with a black or white version. You want it to always be full color. Just got to decide what you want that to be and stick to it. Excuse me. And then the last page is fonts and colors and minimum logo size. So usually, again, this is for when I'm sort of setting clients free and it's on them. So I usually give 2 font options. I give a paid one, which is my preference, right? And then I give a free one they can use if they have to. And I always include, you can't read it, but I include a download link. So if they don't, this one, Tahoma, exists on most computers, and that's why I included it. But if for some reason people don't have it, they can go download it. So whatever your fonts are, probably for your team, it might be helpful to use some kind of freely available font just for sustainability and kids all having the right font. But that's a decision you guys can make. And then if you can, always include a download link. So if people don't have the font, new students come on, they can always go get it. Okay, and then color palette, I include, if you have more than 3 colors, I would maybe take that into consideration. Probably 3 is a good number, maybe 4, but I don't know that you necessarily need it. So if you don't have your colors set them, and then I include all the different color values here. So who knows what Pantone is? People know what Pantone is? Yeah, go ahead. You can't, anyone want to explain what Pantone is? So who knows what CMYK is? Anyone want to define CMYK? Yeah, totally. So it's the 4 different ink colors that most printers have. And so it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And if you need like a purple, it's going to be a combination of cyan and magenta, for example. So they're going to lay down a combination of those inks, okay? But that's not always super reliable, right? The different color inks might dry differently on different papers. Pantone is a color where, have you guys ever been to Home Depot and gotten paint or gone with a parent to get paint, right? And you bring them a little thing and they mix it up right there. They take plain paint and they mix it up so it's the exact color right there. That's what Pantone is for printing. Okay, so you can it's usually shirts are done that way. They'll like mix up the exact color. So it's always a good idea to have a Pantone color available because it's going to be a little more specific than CMYK. And if you guys work with printers commonly, you could talk to them about, maybe they're already using a Pantone color for you for your shirts and just figuring out what that is. But that's always a good one to have on hand. And then I have CMYK, RGB, and hex. Do you guys know what hex are as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a series of numbers and letters with types of color.
Yeah, totally. So it's 6 characters, numbers, or letters, and it's usually used for web stuff. And it's an RGB equivalent, okay? So it's always for digital. So you want to always have those values available. You don't ever want like a new student to come and join your media team and just to like go through the color picker and be like, that's about our, no, that's really bad, right? You want to make sure it's the exact one everywhere across the board, okay? So, and then set a minimum logo size for print applications so that people aren't just like scaling it down super small. Decide, how you want to handle that. And maybe this one, the mark and the company name are all wrapped in one, but maybe if you have a separate mark, you might want to, like I think maybe for the 1678 logo, they have one without the words inside that they might use for really small applications, or without the citrus circuits, just the number. So if you have variants that can be used at smaller sizes, you would just want to specify that too, okay? So that's the full brand standards guide. Does anyone have questions about how to get your brand standards going? Anything that we talked about with brand standards? It's also called a style guide sometimes. If you brand standards, style guide, same thing. Any questions about that? How that works? Cool. Does everyone think this would be helpful for their team to have brand standards if they don't already? Yeah, totally. It's hugely helpful. Was that a question or just agreeing? Agreeing. Okay, cool. Cool. So back to kind of what we talked about at the beginning. So again, the definition of a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. So there are a lot more factors that go into the gut feelings around your brand than just fonts and colors, obviously. But starting there will get you off on the right foot. So once you've done kind of the thought experiment piece at the beginning, setting just these few basic things, making those all unified will go a long way in the right direction. And then as you get to know your brand better, and that kind of like best friend metaphor, right? You'll be able to expand that as far as, hey, this image is a little off-brand, right? This wording is a little bit off-brand, right? Starting to have those conversations within your media team, okay? Cool. Any questions about anything at all that we've covered? Thoughts about branding? Yeah. What do you think some of the biggest weaknesses of your brand are currently? Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So, a lot of that might be, some of it might be design stuff, and then some of it might be, especially with kind of the feelings within your school, some more interpersonal interaction type stuff, So I would think, that might be something you guys are going to have to brainstorm, but figuring out ways you can bridge that gap, ways to sort of invite other students in, be helpful to other students within your school, things like that. I think that would go a long way. And then maybe, even with your design branding assets, making them very friendly and approachable and, things like that, kind of focusing on, whether it's your verbiage, text and things like that, the photos you're using, really going for real, like warm positivity, friendliness, those kind of things. I think that would go a long way. And then some of it, yeah, again, would maybe be more interpersonal stuff. Yeah, that's a good question. Does that help? Cool. Other questions about anything at all that we've covered? Okay. That's it. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. There is a QR code. If you are interested, there is like a survey I believe you can fill out if you want to scan this one. That would be helpful just for workshops going forward next year, things like that. If you have other questions and you want to come talk to me personally, feel free to stick around. I'll stay here for a couple more minutes and be glad to help you out. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for being here. Cool.